Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome to Homeschool Together. Thanks so much for joining us. If you have a chance, head down into the show notes. Check out all of our awesome links, social media and whatnot. Also, if you could head over to iTunes. I know I haven't asked for it in a few months probably, and leave us a nice review. That would be really nice.
We'd sure appreciate it.
We would sure appreciate it. Also, check out our YouTube channel. It's always growing with more and more content, more and more videos as we go around the world with our Build Your Library and Torchlight combined curriculum, K curriculum. We're nearing the end. We're halfway through Asia, and we'll hit Oceania, and then we'll be done.
We got to do Africa. You forgot a whole continent.
We haven't done Africa, you're right. My gosh.
It's felt like a long trip around the world.
It has been a very long trip. I'm sorry. We still have a good portion of we still have a good portion of the earth left to go.
So while we're asking for things, I'd love to we've been doing homeschooling journeys interviews, which we love doing. If you or somebody you know would like to come on the show, just give us a holler. Additionally, we would love to know what experts you all want to hear from. We have recently interviewed
spoilers.
Maria Miller from Math Mammoth, and we have recently interviewed an ADHD expert. So those are some upcoming episodes that you're going to see soon. But we want to know, who else would you like us to talk to? We can certainly reach out and, contact some of these folks and get them on the show. But let us know. Let us know who you want to hear from.
Absolutely. So today, if you've read it in the title, we are going to be talking about how to discuss difficult topics with your young learner. And we try to skew younger here. We're going to be focusing on kind of that 12 and under range. If you've got an older teenager, obviously they'll be a little bit more mature. You'll want to address that in a different way. But we've got a lot of global issues happening in the world. We'll date it today. What's March something in 2022.
Yeah.
So you can look up on the Wayback Machine on what's going around that time.
We've just, we've been having a lot of difficult conversations in our house lately with the Russian invasion of Ukraine to talk about. And we have a personal issue with your dad
My dad took a fall.
He had a really bad injury.
He went for the full punch card of broken bones.
Right. And there was a lot of scary time there when we didn't know what had happened, whether he'd had a heart attack.
A couple things we've had to deal with.
He was not here. So anyway, there's been some really tough things we've had to talk about with our daughter. And, because we're homeschoolers, we're together all the time. I think if our daughter went off to school, then she wouldn't be seeing necessarily as much about, what's going on in Ukraine, for example, but she's home with us. So while we're looking at news articles or we're talking about things, it, she's picking up on all of that. So we've had to have some.
Well, she's a smart kid. We can't code our discussions as much as we used to. And now we're starting to, for a long time, we were starting to spell words to try to hide it away from her. And she's like, wait a minute, Dad, I know what word that is.
Right. Yeah. I can't do that anymore.
But so like when we're having discussions around, while we're making dinner, she's, her ears are perked and she's hearing what we're talking about. And it's something that's different. And Mommy and Daddy sound, a little dour and concerned and things like that. And so she cues in on that. And that's been something that we've, had to realize that we have another set of ears in the house that are sensitive to certain topics. And that's something that we want to make sure that we're addressing in the right way. That we've had these two issues that have come up recently, and that's been something that has kind of brought this idea to the forefront. And we wanted to make a little bit of a podcast about it.
Yeah, just talk about how we talk with our kids about tough things that are going on, personally in our families, in our communities, in our country, in the world, and how we approach that, because it's always something that I'm never, we're not sure about the right way to go about it. So we've done a lot of research for today's podcast, and we hope that our research can help you on the next time you have to have a difficult conversation with your child.
Exactly. And so one of those first key concepts is the idea of being prepared. Obviously there are going to be things that come out of the blue, like my father's injury. But there's other things that kind of unravel slowly, prices going up, or, some type of, national concern, or, something that's happening on the other side of the country that kind of slowly works its way back towards us, that type of thing. Those are concerns. The pandemic was a slow unraveling type of thing.
Right.
That's a good example of something that it didn't hit everywhere at once. It was just something that was starting to happen, and then all of a sudden it became this big thing, and there was a lot of time leading up to it. We used to live
even Ukraine was similar,
Yeah,
right? I mean, we kind of knew there was a buildup, and we had been talking about it a little bit. Now it's obviously much more concerning.
We used to live in Florida, and almost yearly Florida gets hit by some storm. It doesn't matter where it is. Florida's a pretty big state, so it is a high chance that you're not going to get hit. But that was always something that you have this kind of impending doom. Where's Jim Cantori? And is he? I hope he's not in my town.
Don't let him be at my exit.
I don't want him to be at my exit. But that was something that was like kind of a slow unraveling disaster.
You're checking the hurricane forecast
do
daily.
We put up shutters? Do we not put up shutters? Okay, do we need to get some water? Do we have to do these type of things? These were constant concerns for us during, like, say, a hurricane season. But luckily, we don't live there anymore, because we don't want to deal with that. It's too hot.
Yeah, that's
we're weaklings. It's too hot and too many bugs.
That's right.
And alligators and spiders and
snakes.
Oh
my.
my.
So yeah, I think it's important to be prepared if at all possible. And even with your dad's injury, right? We got a call at 6 a.m. They thought he'd had a pulmonary embolism, or maybe he'd had a heart attack, and they just really weren't sure. He was in the hospital. It was very new, an emergent situation. But we immediately were thinking, because once we got off the phone with the hospital, like, okay, how will we talk to our girls about this, right? Because we don't know. Grandpa could be dying right now. He's in another state for work, and we have very limited information, but we were already thinking. So when something happens and you have a moment to breathe, be thinking about, being prepared of how you're going to talk about it. I don't think that it's realistic that we as homeschoolers, as parents really, but especially homeschoolers, because we're with our kids all the time, that we can really avoid talking about things that are concerning with our kids, because it's going to happen. They're going to overhear something or sense how we feel. Yeah,
and then there's this idea of kind of getting out ahead of things. If you know something is coming, or something's going to occur, that might be something that people are talking about. They may overhear hear it at school or whatnot. Getting out ahead of that and starting to prepare them for, hey, by the way, I just want to let you know this thing is happening, and I want you to know that
you might hear about it,
and it's not a big thing. Or maybe there was like a big tornado thing that ripped through the Midwest or something like that, and they overhear about tornadoes and they start to worry. Is that going to happen here? I'm like, no, it's okay. Tornadoes don't happen in the Pacific Northwest. Thank you. We're luckily we don't have that problem. But here's some information. Let's watch a few videos. Let's watch how people prepare for that, so you can kind of dispel the fears. That you can turn something like that into a teaching moment. And funny enough, I did turn that into a teaching moment for both my girls. I pulled out the anatomy book and I showed them all the various bones Grandpa broke on his way down.
Well, right, and that goes further towards helping them to understand more. But the idea is, rather than waiting for your child to overhear bits and pieces of what's going on and grow concerned, you can have that conversation up front.
Exactly.
Honey, you might be hearing that Daddy and I are talking a lot about Ukraine, and here's what's going on, right? And maybe you just want to get out ahead of it. Maybe your child didn't have any idea that this was happening, but dollars to donuts, they're going to find out about it. So it's good to get out ahead of it when you can, before they become concerned. With your dad's injury, we sat our girls down, not our younger daughter, she's only 2, but our 6-year-old, we sat her down and said, this is what's happening, and you're going to hear Daddy and I talking about it all day today. And this is what it is. We didn't try to hide it from her. I think trying to hide it makes it more scary than it is already a scary and worrying situation. but trying to hide it makes it worse. So if you can, try to be the one to initiate the conversation.
Absolutely. The next thing is maybe if you are going to have this conversation, you may want to focus on the idea that you don't want to dump it onto dump a difficult subject onto them when they're already stressed, they're already having issues, maybe they're tired, they're sick, things of that nature. Distracted. You want to try to minimize the impact. You want to get them in, their most restful state, their most accepting state, so that, if it is at any way, anxiety driving, you want to try to minimize that and minimize the impact on them, by finding the right time to do it.
Exactly. With our daughter, I had said, this is what's going, we're having a thing and we're going to talk about it a little bit later when sister goes down for her nap. And we sat down quietly on the couch where we could really have a good conversation about it. I didn't try to do it on the fly. And so, make sure that your child is in a place where they can hear you well. They're not distracted by something else. Like you said, they're not tired or, otherwise worried about some different issue, that you can have a conversation that'll be meaningful with your kid.
Especially if there's a complex problem, that, the next kind of idea that, a lot of times, problems can be very simple, like, oh, grandpa fell, or, a hurricane has hit New Orleans or something like that. But sometimes issues could be a little bit more complex, and you may want to think about, what are the key concepts you want to get across, so that they don't get kind of marred in the weeds and, it gets confusing and they don't understand it. Here, sweetie, let me sit you down and tell you about this area called Donetsk, and this type of thing. And it's already glazed eyes, right? You want to just talk about the high level concepts, especially with these, very difficult, sometimes socioeconomic issues, or, geopolitical issues that are around the world. They can be very multifaceted, and a lot of the nuance there and the subtleties, obviously cannot be something that a 6-year-old can uptake. They can get the big points and the big movements, and maybe try to simplify what's the messaging that you're teaching your child about, while also minimizing the anxiety. Like if it becomes too complex, they'll get confused. Maybe the anxiety will rise. Like, oh, maybe I should know this. I need to understand this, but I don't really understand. And, there may be some concerns there.
If you present a complex issue, and you present too much of it, it can actually cause more worry than it can help. So, and the last thing we would preface this is that your kiddos best. And if you have a very sensitive child, approach that carefully. The whole goal of this is not to increase their worry, but to include them and explain what's happening so that they can be more informed and not needlessly be scared. Or can at least process the situation. Obviously, with the situation with your dad, that was scary. That was a situation to worry. We were all scared and worried, but at least by having the conversation the right way, she was able to help process that and be there with us and not be, I guess it sounds wrong to be afraid of the right things, and not afraid of the wrong things, but understanding enough about a situation can help your child to focus on what's actually going on, and not the snippets and pieces and what they've built up in their brain might be going on.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess is the better way to put it.
Yeah. So that's the idea of preparation. So obviously, depending on the scenario, you may have to do some preparation, but obviously that preparation will be for a certain developmental age. And so you do want to make sure that you're starting at a good place, using your judgment on your child. So starting off at like a 2 and 6-year-old level, kind of in that range.
Yeah, we're going to talk about 2 developmental ages today, that 2 to 6 and 7 to 12, because those are just 2 vastly different groups.
And even within the 2 to 6,
there's a big variation. We have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they are vastly different. But these are generalizations, and take these with a grain of salt. And one of the things is, as homeschool parents, we are so in tune with our kiddos, and we're with them all the time. You'll know where they fit in this spectrum, but in general, a 2 to 6-year-old set, just to start out with them, they have less life experiences, so it's really hard for them to understand complex issues.
A lot of times, with those young kids, they're relating things to what they know, like,
right, and they don't have a whole lot of varied experiences.
So did you use any Harry Potter references?
No. We certainly do.
How about in Canto, when the guy's got the broken arm and the mom feeds the food and it fixes his arm?
Yeah, no. So it's difficult, right? They don't have a lot of life experiences. They're also not very good at abstract concepts, understanding kind of cause and effect, right? Talking about something when we did talk with our daughter earlier this week about the war in Ukraine, that was to her, that was very abstract.
It was.
And so,
she had only just learned about Ukraine a couple of weeks before.
Right. It's a very difficult. So just know that age group is not really going to be able to wrap their brains around those abstract concepts very well. They're more focused on the things that really affect them, their immediate situation, so their family, their friends, their neighborhood, that kind of thing. So if you can try to relate things back to something that they can identify with and that they can understand, right? We were talking about Ukraine, and we were talking about people leaving their homes, and we said, imagine that we had to pack all of our things and leave our home, and we didn't know if we would ever see our home again. We couldn't take all of our toys with us and things. And she was like, oh, so she kind of understood, like, oh, that's what they're having to do. And I said, yes. And that's why it's so scary for these people and very sad. And Daddy and I are talking about, like, something that she could kind of identify with. So just remember that because their pool of life experiences is smaller, you need to try to connect it to something that they can relate to in some way. Yeah. They're also going to be very sensitive to the emotions of us as their parents. They can really internalize how we feel and think that maybe they caused that in some way. So, Mommy and Daddy are really upset about this situation with Grandpa. And, she's thinking, like, are they mad at me? Are they crying because of something I did? Are they, so that can be really tough with this age kiddo, because
it may require a little bit of reinforcing in the moment,
right.
saying, it's nothing you've done. There's nothing wrong with you. It's nothing that we are upset about you. It's just something we're sad about somewhere else. Because if you think about it from her standpoint, the only time Mommy and Daddy get kind of upset or cry or whatever, it's always something, I'm in the mix of that. And this is something outside of that.
Right.
So her normal gauge is, well, I'm part of this somehow, and maybe I did something wrong or whatever.
And it wasn't my first thought to think that way. So when I was doing research for this episode, I was surprised to see that one of the first things that children in that age group will do is think that they are maybe at fault for the way that parents feel.
It makes sense, because
it totally makes sense, but I didn't think
yeah.
about it in the time, and so I'm glad that we know that now and can be expecting it. So you should be prepared for that as well.
So the idea of talking to the age group, that's the terms you use, the inflection in your voice, how I went to the globe and pulled down the globe and showed her where it's happening, that type of thing. Like,
right.
How do you talk to a kid of this age about these things?
Right. So this 2 to 6 age group, step 1, find out what they might already know. Yeah. It's really important to know what the basis is. They may have heard bits and pieces, and you need to know kind of what you're working with before you come into this. Then you can gauge, where you need to maybe, correct them or explain further. Really avoid showing them the news or anything graphic. Media. We got pictures of Grandpa when he was very injured, and we did not show those to our children because we knew that would just be upsetting. We have not turned on the news about Ukraine. We're doing all of our news and things in the evenings when our kids are in bed, because we know that some of these images would be very disturbing to them. So, try if you can to avoid showing them something that they're not ready to handle.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's something I remember when I was younger. When I was 9, that was when the Gulf War happened, 91. Mm-hmm. And I remember my parents, watching this thing every night, and they're very animated, and it was like, they were concerned. And I would come to them and go, what's going on? And they didn't let me watch those first few nights. And then they finally said, okay, this is a very adult thing. You can sit with us and watch. And they explained it to me, and I was able to, see what was happening. But, I was 9, almost 10, mature. I could not imagine, especially with the way the media, the way the access to, everybody's got a phone in their hands. We have access to videos that are on the ground. That's not something that I want, my daughter seeing anything accidentally coming up on the screen that might be very traumatizing to them.
Right. Well, and I would definitely argue that our news today is much more graphic than it was.
Yeah, it was probably
30 years ago. Ooh, we're dating ourselves when the Gulf War was happening.
Are we that old?
So
I was born when there was still the Soviet Union.
yeah. Part of the issue with news media is that it's really hard for us to control what might flash across the screen that our kids may see. So just be really cautious of sources of information that you can't control, to make sure that you don't scare them, right? We're not trying to not tell them the truth or anything, but there are images that I have seen of what's happening over there right now that are scarring to me as an adult. Yeah, exactly. I would not want my child to see these images. And so just be real careful with the news, especially. The next thing is when you're explaining, you try to use basic vocabulary about the situation and break it into the simplest terms that you can. Don't over-explain. Yeah. So maybe your child can understand much higher concepts, but really try to keep it simple, because especially if this is a time when they might be worried or upset, don't go at the bounds of of what they will understand, right? You want to be real simple, really clear.
Right in the wheelhouse, because they want to be comfortable with the terms that you're explaining to them, so it doesn't breed any additional anxiety that might occur.
Absolutely. When I sat our daughter down, I said, I want to tell you that Grandpa is in the hospital right now. And what we know about him is that he's getting the best care that he can. And she immediately said, is Grandpa going to die? And we said, we don't think so. And we pray that he is not. But we don't know that. And right now, Mommy and Daddy are doing our best to take care of the things we need to do so that Grandma can be there to support Grandpa in the hospital. And we will tell you as soon as we know something. But right now, what we know is that he's where he needs to be, and he's with really good doctors. And we tried to be really reassuring that, Grandpa is a doctor, and all the other doctors, they all know each other. So Grandpa's getting really good care. Those other doctors are taking really good care of Grandpa, and he's right where he needs to be. And there's no better place for him than exactly where he's at, just trying to reassure her.
That's a line I've always told, even up to adults, he or she is where they need to be in case something happens. And that is a very calming statement. It's it's not like they're out on a boat or up in the airplane or in the middle of nowhere. They're in the hospital, they're in the ER. Those doctors know exactly what they're doing. They're miracle workers. Those frontline docs are just unbelievably talented, especially the ICU docs, any ER docs, anyone who goes in there, you're getting the best of the best. These guys are the guys who can do just amazing things. And so it's very comforting to know it's okay, I wouldn't want him anywhere else. I would want him not falling, hurting himself and back home. Other than that, he is, with the situation we're at, he could not be in a better situation.
Exactly. Yeah. It's important in this to try to explain. You want to basically go as far as you need to so that they understand the situation, and you've tried to assuage whatever worry you can. Obviously, like in this situation, we were all going to continue to be worried. Yeah. And that's the next thing is we need to validate what they're feeling and tell them how we're feeling. This was a time when she said, I'm really worried. I'm really scared for Grandpa. And I said, you know what? Daddy and I are really scared too. And it's okay that we're scared and we're worried about this. Mm-hmm. We're all scared and worried together. Yep. And we're just going to all stay close to each other, and we can give extra snuggles today if we want to. And as soon as we know something, we will tell you what we know. And so she kind of was a bit relieved because she knew something was going on. She knew that this was all happening. Something was happening. And then she knew what it was, and she knew that Mommy and Daddy were going to tell her as soon as we could. Yeah. The important thing with this age group is that they need lots of reassurance, that they are safe, and that, we are doing what we can do. And, they don't need to take on any additional,
they don't need to carry any weight.
Right. Yeah, that's I'm trying to come up with it, but you're right. We are not relying on them to do anything. Mm-hmm. We're just telling them this is what's happening, and we're here, and you're safe, and Mommy and Daddy are here for you. And we feel this way too. And it's okay to have the feelings that you're having, because we really want to validate that it's all right. We don't want them to feel like she shouldn't be worried or she shouldn't be scared. It's okay to have those feelings. Those are real. And, we all have to live with those emotions, but you should be scared in the right context, right? That, hey, he is in the best place he can be.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yep. So moving on from the kind of that 2-year-old to 6-year-old range, let's go to that kind of the 7-year-old to kind of that early teenager years of 12 years old. Obviously cognitively, they're way more accelerated.
Absolutely.
They can understand deeper concepts, more sophisticated, ideas and more abstract thinking. What are the type of things that we're going to be looking for when we're explaining something to, someone who's kind of a proto-teenager?
Yeah, really, this is that transitional age between childhood and teenager, more independence. So they're definitely able to understand more abstract concepts. So that's something that, the youngers can't, and this older group is going to be more prepared to do that. Not in all cases, because abstract thinking is difficult even for adults, but they'll be more capable of it. They have more experiences, which they can help them understand these complex topics, more experiences than our younger kiddos. So when we talk to this age group, we really, again, we want to find out what they know. It's always good to baseline what they already
Baselining,
know.
I think, is a great way to put it. Like, find out where you're at, because you got to know, the only way to get to where you got to go is got to know where you are, and and get that baseline is really good, because especially with these older, with older kids, they may, have friends they're texting with, their friends may have said something, they may be at school or in a class or in a co-op or something of that nature, and somebody could have said something, and you need to make sure what you've heard, and so you can understand maybe if there's some information that's incorrect. You need to be able to correct that.
Right. The best example of this is, the talk, right? The sex talk, right? What do you know already?
What?
I mean, this
birds
is
and the bees. Are we going into birds and the bees?
This is a difficult topic too. For
we're early learners. This is not. We're not doing a podcast for until 400 or 500 here.
7 to 12, right?
Birds and the bees. My God.
So there. I mean,
all right, I'm out of here. This is getting uncomfortable.
So these are things, right? What do you already know? So we can assess where we need to start the conversation. We already know the big points we want to talk about, right? But we need to know, how far down the road, where we should start, where we should fill in gaps. Also, with this age group, it's best not to push the issue if they aren't ready to discuss it, right? They understand more. They're trying to figure things out for themselves. So you may say, maybe just recently there was a school shooting, right? And had our daughter heard that, she's kind of on the cusp of this, right? She's 6.5. So she has some traits of both groups, depending on the day and exactly what it is. But, if she had heard about something like that and we had said, hey, do you want to talk about this? She might have said she wasn't ready to talk about it yet. We shouldn't push the issue.
Exactly.
Right. If they're not ready to speak about it yet, that's okay.
Let them come to you. Yeah.
And then we reassure, hey, we're here. And when you're ready to talk about it, I'm ready to listen, and I will help explain anything that you need. And, we have to give them a little bit more space, to come to us and let them know that we're going to answer them honestly without any judgment, right? It's a safe space to talk.
Yeah, exactly. But, moving into that, when you start to talk to them, you want to focus on the why of something, not just the what.
Right. With that younger group, it's the what.
Yeah.
Yeah. In this older group, we kind of need to go with the why, right? Yeah. When we explained Ukraine, we told our daughter that this is what is happening.
Yeah.
Right. The why would have been way too complex for her.
Way too complex for her.
Right. She wouldn't get it. It would just confuse the issue for her. It would be over-explaining. This older group, they want to know the why. So we have to make sure that we think about that in our preparation to talk to this age group. And then for this group, they may, and maybe with your help or maybe independently, they may want to find out more about this topic. And so it's up to us to help. Maybe even in our preparation, think about some appropriate resources that are going to give them age-appropriate information, right? I don't want to take a 10-year-old and say, yeah, just go ahead and watch the news and go on CNN by yourself, right? That's probably not appropriate, depending on what situation's happening. But trying to look up and find some age-appropriate resources that you can give them. Hey, we can talk about this. If you want to know more information about this issue, this is a really good place for you to go and learn about it, for example.
Exactly.
The next thing is to ask questions that encourage them to have their critical thinking skills, right? Like, this happened. Why do you think that would happen? How do you think those people feel?
And also to challenge,
how does this make you feel?
Yeah, challenge, their thinking, ask them, how would you have done something different in this situation? What would you do to change this situation? Have you thought about that type of things? We don't always want to say that we can turn every situation into a learning experience, but in some respects we can do that. And by picking the right, materials, approaching it in the right way, you as a parent can also learn more while you're also learning it along with your student. 'Cause sometimes there may be a situation that you don't understand how this happened, and you don't know enough about this, and you don't know why this is becoming such a huge issue in the world. You may want to do a little bit of reading and deep dive, and you may even want to kind of, in some respects, do a little unit study together with your learner to understand what is happening,
Right. If this is something that they want to learn more about, I think it's good. I think it's good to think about things critically so that they can have a better understanding about how situations become so complex. Right. I think that's helpful. The other thing is, before you leave this conversation, you need to check how they feel. Yeah. Right. Sometimes I feel like I've talked to our daughter and she seems fine. And then if I stop myself and I ask, how do you feel now? Well, actually, I'm a little bit upset. I'm a little bit worried about this, right? So just because they took in the information well and you feel like they've handled it, still check in with them, because they aren't adults yet, even though they're in this transitional stage, and they still need your support and that reassurance that it is okay to feel that way. So I think that, I don't know, I feel like as adults, we need reassurance that it's okay to have our feelings. So at every age, I think kids do too.
Yeah, a lot of times there's never that decompression or the debriefing off of a situation or some challenging thing. We always forget to ask, how are you feeling? Are you okay about this? Do you need me to support you in another way? That's a really good point. That's something I know I don't do enough with my daughters, to say, okay, this thing happened. Are you okay about it? Or how do you feel about this? We did a lot of the how about your feeling? Learn about your feelings, or what was the thing for Torchlight with the know your feelings?
Yeah, a whole bunch of feelings.
Whole bunch of feelings.
That's
yeah,
the book,
we did a lot of feeling stuff, and you kind of just forget about that and you stop doing that, and that's something that I think
I mean, I feel like most adults aren't as in touch with their feelings as they need to be, and this social emotional learning is so important for our kids, and I've been through a lot of therapy for anxiety related issues. And so I'm kind of always on the lookout for my daughter having any, emotional state that where she outwardly looks like she's coping with something, but maybe she's really not, because I've been there. I've been the one pretending to cope and really not. The last thing we would say about this age group is that if this group feels compelled to help in some way or wants to take action, help them find that resource. In our daughter's case, she really wanted to do something. What can I do about Grandpa? And, we said that one of the best things that she could do is help to take care of Grandpa's dog. And so when Grandpa's dog came to stay with us, and he's been with us now for a couple of months, that she could really look after him, and she could be extra nice to him, and maybe she could be extra nice to her sister that day while we were dealing with that, so that, we didn't have to worry too much about them fighting and things. And could she step up and be a bit bigger kid for the day? And she really took on that. She did. She helped with the dog. She helped with her sister. So maybe
and the dog's been sleeping in her bed every night.
That's right.
She's now got a cuddle buddy.
Right.
Buddy is the name of the dog, so she's got a cuddle buddy.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, if they feel compelled, and they want to take some sort of action, I think the younger set of kids they're usually okay to hear what you have to say, and oftentimes they don't feel the need to do something themselves.
But even the 2.5-year-old got in on the mix. She started reading bedtime stories to Grandpa.
She did. We started videoing bedtime
stories to Grandpa, and he enjoyed those.
Yeah, we did some fun things.
The literary classic, "You Are My Cupcake."
And
You are my sticky little gumdrop.
and big girl panties.
And big girl panties.
Yep. So, yeah, if your kids can feel compelled to take some sort of action, just be there to help them. And maybe that's part of your preparation too, of thinking about, what could they do?
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about preparation, ways to talk to these kind of two breakups of ages from about 2 to 12.
And those are kind of general too,
Those are
right?
general,
You know
yeah.
your child best. You may have a 5-year-old that displays all the traits of an 8-year-old in this, developmental age. You know your children best and what they can handle. These are just some kind of rough guidelines.
So, just to kind of wrap it up, the ideas that we kind of talked about, understanding that you want to kind of follow your learner's lead. You want to tell them something, you want to bring them into a difficult concept, but you do want to let them kind of guide, what they're feeling, how they're responding to
if they have a concern,
information.
maybe
Yeah.
you didn't even know about, right? Definitely follow, where their concern goes and try to answer that. I mean, you do have to kind of lead the conversation, but it is a conversation. It shouldn't be a monologue.
Exactly.
It should not be you sitting down and say, okay, here's what I'm going to tell you. This should be interactive because that's the most impactful and meaningful conversations are interactive.
Yeah. Next thing is, do not lie. You're going to be doing
Right.
information.
That sounds really
difficult.
simple. Don't lie.
Don't lie.
But that sounds like an easy thing, but it's really hard because there's things like I could have said, but don't worry, Grandpa's going to be just fine.
Yeah, we didn't know.
And we didn't say that because we actually didn't know if he would be okay. And it would have been so easy to say, yep, he's in the hospital, but he's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. I didn't know that. And so it can be really tough, but I think honesty is so important, for them to...
Because when there's a tough situation, you want your child to trust what you're telling them. And
Exactly.
not in a manipulative way, but you want them to believe what you're saying, because in this moment, it really matters what I'm saying and what I'm telling you, because this is a very important situation. This isn't you cleaning up the dishes at the kitchen table or picking up the toys here or putting your socks on before you go outside.
Right.
This is a very important thing, and I want your full attention, because I'm going to tell you the truth here. And I want you to remember this, right? Because there could be an important situation that comes up in the future, and I need you to understand what's happening. Like in this case, I had to go run around and do a bunch of stuff, and I you were taking care of the kids for me, and that was something that our daughter saw me just disappear. I had to go do a bunch of stuff,
Right.
and she was probably wondering what was happening. So it was important that she knows you're getting truthful information from
right.
mommy, and daddy has to go off and do a bunch of things for today, and then he'll be back, right? And that type of thing. So telling the truth, I think, is a big.
It's
even
important.
though you're abbreviating the concepts, you're
That's right.
abbreviating
It
the
doesn't mean the
information.
whole
Yeah.
truth. It doesn't mean that you have to give them all of the details of everything. It can be abbreviated, but it is truthful. We're not going to lie and tell them the situation is, different than it. It's our natural instinct to want to reassure them that everything is going to be fine. But
In
we
serious
can't say that
situations,
if we don't know that that's actually
exactly.
the case,
Yeah.
right?
And it's okay not to admit that you don't. And that kind of leads into the next thing, which is admitting you don't know what is happening, or you don't know.
I don't have all the answers
of what's going on, but here is what is happening, and I will give you the most up-to-date information that I have at that
Right.
moment. So that would be something if there's an emergency, like a family emergency. It could be a natural disaster, like there could be an earthquake, heaven forbid, or a volcano erupts here in the Pacific Northwest.
Don't say it.
I know.
Scary.
I'm welcoming. I'm
Don't
welcoming
say
all
it.
the
It's
team.
scary. Right. It doesn't matter.
But those
what
are the
the
type of
situation.
things that are more immediate. Like,
It could be,
yeah.
but it could be even with Ukraine. Right?
Yeah.
We did have to say we don't know everything.
Yeah.
We know a lot, but we don't have all the information on this situation right now.
Yeah.
So it's okay to admit that you don't have all the answers, or that the situation is just really difficult to explain. Sometimes I have to say, mommy think for a couple minutes about how I want to tell you about this, because it's a little bit tough for me. And that's okay. It's okay to tell them that.
Absolutely. Next thing is, even though these type of conversations are hard, and they're very difficult, and it's very hard to keep your emotions kind of together when you're talking about very difficult things.
Or something that's just uncomfortable, right? We've been talking about disasters and terrible things. This could be the sex talk. It could just be the uncomfortable conversation, or drugs, or something that's really uncomfortable.
I'm starting to sweat. You keep bringing up these sweaty concepts. You know who's going to be doing the talk. It ain't going to be me.
Yeah.
But, you are the right person to give that conversation to your kids. I mean, you are that first person. You're the person they rely on for information. You are there every single day. You're educating them. You're their primary caregiver. You are the right person to give that conversation. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to provide all the information.
Or that you're the most knowledgeable.
Yeah, but you are the right person to be facilitating that conversation.
Exactly. You know what your child can handle. You know their sensitivities. You can see, I can physically see if my daughter is understanding what I'm saying, or if she has no nuance. Idea.
You can see it in the eyes, the way the wrinkle 1 twitches versus wrinkle 2 twitches. And I go, oh, I know that difference. I have seen that difference a million times.
Right. Yeah. She's not getting it. This is over her head. Yeah. You can understand what their emotional state is, right? So you're the best person, even if you're not, the world's most knowledgeable person about the subject. That's still okay. The other thing is, when you're having this conversation, don't rush it. Yep. Don't speak too quickly. Make sure that your child can really understand everything that you're saying and take it in, and leave space for silence. It's okay to give them a few moments to process, to be able to ask a question. If we go too quickly, we might not be giving them that breathing room that they need to think of all the questions they want to ask us.
And when they ask questions, you need to be there to be listening, right? It's that you're going to be having that kind of back and forth a lot of times, because they're going to ask questions back, and you need to be able to hear what they're asking and understand that how they're asking that question, and maybe some of the subtext that's hidden beneath it that you can then you can step into or follow up with another question that maybe teases out where the concerns are.
It's hard to be a good listener. I mean, it's easy to talk, but it's hard to listen well. You want to make good eye contact to be a good listener. You might want to repeat back what they said, so you ensure that you understood their question correctly. And, you really want to be empathetic. So those are all kind of good traits of good listeners. You want to be totally engaged and not all about what you have to tell them.
Yeah. And then the idea that, you may not fully have the full conversation, that they can obviously come back and ask you more later, and be there to offer support whenever they need it, whatever the situation is, whatever the topic is. Because a lot of times with these younger brains, they need to go and process it. The neurons are firing, and they're processing their emotions, and maybe they fully don't understand it. They got to ask you later. I can't tell you how many times our daughter has come back to us the next day, a week later.
Yeah, sometimes it's been a long time.
And you go, my gosh, I don't even remember that, but I sort of remember talking about that with you, and now they want to have the conversation
about it. Yeah, it's been going around in her brain.
It's unbelievable. It's one of those things that you just don't fully appreciate it until you see it happen with these younger kids, when they come back to you and go, you know what, that thing we talked about a month ago is really still bothering me. Or I want to talk about this thing that happened, 2 weeks ago. And you're just like, wow, it took you that long to process that. And that's a good thing. And now you want to talk about it. So, leave that space to know that they may come back and ask for some additional help.
That's right. The other thing is, if your child brings up a subject that, does need sensitivity, this kind of time to sit and talk about it, and they bring it up sometime when it just doesn't work. You're in the car, you're on your way to an appointment,
waiting at the doctor's office.
Your house is crazy, you got kids running around, or you're just unprepared. It's really okay to tell them that, you want to discuss this with them, but you need to do it in a few minutes, or, hey, we need to wait until sister goes down for her nap, but then I do want to talk with you about this. It's okay to delay that conversation, as long as you give them some context of when you'll talk about it with them. Don't feel that you have to have this conversation just because they brought it up right now and you're in the car. It is better to wait and have a more meaningful conversation than to have a rushed conversation more quickly. So just kind of, play with that a little bit, but remember that you're not on the hook to answer right now. You're still validating their curiosity or their concern, or, whatever it is. And you could even maybe make an abbreviated statement that helps them in the moment, and then have the full conversation later.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. You don't need to. I think it's much more impactful to have the quiet, meaningful conversation. So, think on that a little bit.
But it's also, what if that conversation doesn't go the way you think it's
right.
gonna
What
go,
if you've done all this
right?
preparation and then it goes like sideways? That could be really hard. And you know what? It's okay to approach it again at a later time when you've had more opportunity to prepare or to look at something from a different angle. I mean, what if you thought you had totally prepared for the sex talk and
She
you
keeps bringing it up.
well,
guys.
I mean, it's coming for us someday. And what if that's a talk you thought you were really ready for and it didn't go the way you wanted? It's okay. You don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. You can always approach it again, right? Maybe you made some progress. And remember that maybe the conversation that you need to have, if this isn't about a major event, if this is about some other change of life or something, it's okay to have this in multiple smaller conversations. This doesn't have to be the talk. This could just be a talk.
A lot of times the more complex the subject, the more discussions are necessary
Absolutely.
to kind of tease out, how we're going to handle it, how the family will handle this, how you will handle it, how the world will handle it, whatever it might be. Understanding, how do we proceed with things? How do we move forward? What is the new normal? Those type of ideas may take multiple discussions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember, if you leave this conversation and your child is anxious or unnecessarily stressed about this issue, then try to teach them ways to cope. Sometimes this may be the first time that your child has really been presented with this type of issue that may be very scary and very worrisome. So it's up to us to try to teach them those skills. Maybe that's some breathing exercises, focusing on their senses, guided imagery. I love, right? Close your eyes, picture this relaxing scene. That helps my daughter tremendously when she's having a really worrisome time. If you find that there is excessive worry or crippling fear and you can't, your attempts to help your child cope with that aren't working, definitely seek help from a licensed therapist or counselor because, you may need, depending on what's going on, you may really need that help. So be on the lookout. But if you can teach your child some ways to help cope with these emotions, then definitely try to do that. And the last thing that we would say about this conversation is don't rely on your children to help you process whatever's going on. And this is like a page out of my own childhood. My mom would do this with me. She would tell me things as a child and bounce things off of me and have me help her process life events that were happening. And I was not developmentally ready for that. And it caused me as an adult to really have an excessive amount of worry because I was kind of forced to try to help with situations I wasn't ready for. Yeah. So don't rely on your kids. It's okay to tell them that you're worried or that you're scared about something, but you want to wrap them in a cocoon of love and safety if you can. That everything that you are here for them, that they are safe, that mommy and daddy are here for you. And if you're struggling with what's going on, you need to process that with another adult. Yeah, exactly. Right. So when this happened with your dad, we had a reassuring conversation with her. We told her the truth. We told her where we were at. You and I had countless conversations where we were trying to process what this meant and what happens if he did die, God forbid, and all of that, right? We processed that together. If I had gone on that merry-go-round with my daughter, that would have really caused her
a lot of anxiety.
It would have caused her so much anxiety. So, it can sometimes our kids, we're with them and they can become our best friends sometimes. And we want to talk more freely with them, but we really have to be careful because they, as much as we love them and they are our best little buddies, they aren't ready to handle it. So
this is one
just
of those,
remember that.
Yeah, one of those more like deeper philosophical, more and somewhat topical discussions. But these are these type of nuanced, complexities that we run into as homeschool parents because we are spending so much time with them, and that our lives and our education and our whole world kind of interweave in this kind of this wild nested, knot. And sometimes things bleed across and we need to be able to, to process them. And I think, these were some really good ideas and everything. So let's end it the way we always do. What are we into? Ariel, the world loves a certain sport that America doesn't like. What is that sport?
I feel like this was a transition too. This was such a heavy episode. Like
Yeah,
I felt
we're going to transition into
I felt
something
like
fun.
I felt like this was like kind of weighing on me. We hope that this has really
Yeah, we
helped
do.
all of you families out there have these conversations. But yes, to transition.
Another transition.
Yeah, we our whole family is into soccer now, and I mean, you may have gotten drafted to be the soccer coach today. I'm not really sure.
Ariel and I have, so
I think that it has
played-
probably happened.
I played sports for a lot of years, people. Take a knee. Get an orange slice. Grab a water bottle. Mr. Matt here has played lots of sports for lots of years. Decades, literally decades, multiple decades, many decades of sports.
You're not that old.
I can probably honestly say I played basketball for nearly 3 decades. Since I was like 6 till I was like 36. Until I gave it up. That's like 3 decades. I played local rec ball when I got old.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I've been
playing
playing solid basketball for 25 years.
probably.
Competitive golf for a lot of years. Played baseball. Played a lot of sports. And Errol and I have been discussing for years. I go, sweetie, I'm going to get drafted into being a coach. I know it. It's going to come and they'll be like, oh, Mr. Matt, we don't have any coach. There's no parent that's willing to step up, and you're so tall and you know sports.
Yeah,
You'd be
even though you don't
perfect.
know soccer,
Even though you don't know anything about soccer.
this exact thing is happening right now. Our daughter is very into soccer
Yep.
right now. She's getting ready to start on her team
4x4,
here
yeah.
locally for the Boys and Girls Club,
Yep.
and for kindergarten, our 4-foot kindergartner,
Yes.
and over 4 foot.
4 foot kindergarten.
So yeah, I'm ready for her to dominate.
She can be ready to start driving.
So yep. So I think you're gonna get drafted into
We
that.
were playing
and
soccer all day. We've been doing dribble exercises. We've been throwing the ball to each other. We've been kind of
It's been fun. We've
getting
been
used
out.
to our bodies in movement.
We've been out playing in the front yard
it's been really- we've had
in
some
the middle
sunny-
of the school day. So it's been funny because there's no other kids out playing. And so, we actually were down with the neighbor kids yesterday, and they wanted to play a little bit of soccer. And she was like, oh, I've been practicing, and it's interesting because it's kind of like, that's just a part of our day. Hey, let's get outside now and do some soccer. And it's great because it's like a new PE element. You had before, you would say, okay, let's get outside and go on the swings for a little bit, or let's go on a walk, a nature walk or something. But now you have like, hey, it's soccer time. So
can tell you what,
it's kind of PE at the moment.
My soul was warmed because I was playing catch with my daughter with the soccer ball today. And
It was pretty cute.
I've always said that's the one thing I've always wanted was just to play catch in the front yard with somebody, and she was throwing the ball and kicking the ball to me. It was giving me the vapors. I was having a good time.
We'd love to hear what you all do for PE in your home schools. This is just what's come up for us now, but yeah, definitely let us know because it's been really fun for
my
us.
little Mia Ham. She's growing up so quickly.
We'll see. This is her very first sports foray due to the pandemic.
Yeah.
This is the first time she's gotten to play anything, so we'll see how she takes to it.
Yes.
And
Coach Matt.
think of us as we're out in the Seattle rain coaching soccer with a 2-year-old and coach. Well, I mean, I'll be there to watch with the 2-year-old. So while you coach, I'll be there with a flag. Go, Matt.
Well, the funny
Go.
thing is, I did some. I thought I wanted to get into coaching as like a thing, and I had some dreams of maybe coaching basketball, and I went and did a AAU 12-year-old basketball.
11-year-old.
11 or 12, and it was quite an eye-opening experience.
They were boys.
They were boys, and they were a little crazy, and I don't know if like the parents.
You weren't prepared for that,
I
especially
was too young for that.
when
When
the
28, it was not right time.
when the boys team was practicing in the same gym as the girls team, and the boys, this is the first time they'd run around all day. They had not done recess
To be
or
honest, it was like
anything.
the first time I was around like kids a lot, and I'm looking over going, I'm looking at the boys who've like got their pants through their arms and
their arms through their pants,
and they're running around screaming. And then over on the other side of the gym were these wonderful, peaceful women just jogging.
They're like,
around
okay,
the
girls,
court.
let's get in a
Let's
line. The
do-
girls are like, okay,
Let's do the activity.
let's
Dribble
do
drills.
layups.
And I'm looking over, and it's mass chaos over here at Fly Girls, and it's perfectly organized chaos over there. And I'm just like, I want that. And that's what I think I told you. I said, I think I want girls. I
Yeah,
want
and then
girls.
look what we had.
And look what it
Girls.
is. And here the dogs are. The dogs are here to tell us the episode is over. So get yourself into soccer. Let us know if you're doing some PE. The dogs are staring at me. I got to take them out. It's getting late. We've been podcasting too long. I hope you guys have a good time. I know this was a little bit more of a difficult episode, but hopefully it gave you some good information you could take back into your homeschool and get yourself through those tough situations.
Absolutely.
And really bond with your children. So we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time.
Happy homeschooling!